Morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for your patience. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Oh, just FYI, if you know of one of your colleagues that normally attends the training and you don't see them on, please reach out to them and make sure that they have the updated link. The session will be recorded, so we will send the recording out when we are done. We do have some great information to go over with you today. It may not take the entire day because we know you are busy and have a lot of things going on, but we do want to make sure we get this pertinent information to you all. Dr. Killingsworth, I know that's not me, that's Dr. Killingsworth. She is attending. She cannot be here at the office, but she is online. So she will answer questions in the chat, but she's definitely a part of this process. So just know she's here. But I will welcome you all again. Welcome. We are glad that you're able to join us today. So I'm looking forward to a great meeting. If you have any questions throughout, please place them in the chat. And we have Brittany and Edward monitoring the chat. They will be able to answer your question in the chat, or there will be time to answer them aloud if it's necessary for the entire group. Just a roll call. Who do we have with us today? If you would, please put your name in the chat along with your LEA so that we can see who is on the call. And while you're doing that, from Federal Programs, happy New Year. This is our first meeting together since the new year. I hope the new year's been going well for you all. I know after January comes testing, and after testing, that's a wrap for the school year. So hopefully you are having a great time and being able to get your year planned out and organized while we are starting to prepare for the 2026-2027 school year. Just as you're doing that, also tell us how long you've been a Federal Programs Director, because I know we may have some newbies in this meeting. Let me know if you started after our first new directors training, meaning our first one for this year, which was in, help me out, lady, when August, September. So if you started after September, let us know in the chat so that I will be able to make sure I cater and meet your needs as well. Where are we right now? Right now, from the U.S. Department of Ed, we don't have any updates right now, but tell me, how are you doing? What to you feels manageable as a new director? And then what are some things that you're unclear about? This information helps us to cater to your needs, make sure we meet your needs, because as a new director, you are faced with a lot. And Federal Programs is not for the weak. It's definitely an area where it takes time to learn, to grow, and to develop. So sometimes being new, you may feel overwhelmed and isolated. That's a word that we don't want you to experience, isolation. So in order to help you and help you serve your district, let us know what are some that are heavy for you or are unclear so that we can ensure that we are supporting you throughout the year. And also, what we have some not so new, but new Federal Program Directors on here. From your first year to now, what do you think is more manageable? What feels a lot clearer and better for you? That will help us to see the areas we may not need to pay as much attention to. So if you can also enter that in the chat, and we will pull this chat before the ending of the presentation and kind of go through the data. So just let us know that so that we can continue to meet your needs. We do have a couple new individuals that started after September. So just hang with us. Later on, I'm going to go through a lot of information that may be unfamiliar to you as I'm talking. But after lunch, we're going to get into a smaller group and a breakout sessions, and we're going to practice some of the things that we talk about. So you're going to be able to ask specific questions as it relates to your LEA. So things like the AIMS portal, the socioeconomic indicator tile in the AIM portal, we're going to go through that. So if you do not have access to the AIM portal, that's something to let us know in the chat, or make sure you reach out to your superintendent or his or her designee to make sure you are identified in EdDur as the person to have access to these specific tiles. And I'll say that again, that's the AIM portal. And the socioeconomic indicator tile specifically is what you will need to have access to after lunch. So just put that caveat out there so you don't feel so as I'm going through this presentation. We will have smaller to kind of dissect some of the information we go through today. Just as you're making it clear or trying to provide us with information of what's manageable, what's unclear, let us know, are you having any type of reoccurring challenges when it comes to certain processes and even monitoring compliance issues, procedures issues, anything that's kind of reoccurring since you started that you may be unsure about or maybe need support with figuring it out or coming up with the process, just let us know by adding that information to the chat. All right, so looking forward, here is our agenda. Here are the things that we're going to cover. Eric is going to go through CSPR data. He's going to tell you more about that information. Then we're going to hear from LEA Accounting to go over some carryover in the FER process. Yes, we use a lot of acronyms here in federal programs, but FER is just your financial records, how you close out the year and how you draw down funds. And then I will follow back up to talk more about carryover. LA Accounting will talk about the fiscal aspect of carryover, and I will then talk about the programmatic piece of carryover and how do we add that information in our narrative that's in EGAP to keep that clear and concise. Then we're going to wrap up before lunch talking about Title I schools, how do we plan for the upcoming 2026 school year, talk some about CEP, what that looks like, how do I go through the process of identifying my data to start planning for this upcoming 2026-27 school year. And then we're also going to we're going to put some of that into practice after lunch, okay? And we will hear a little from Title IV, and then we will go back and discuss those parking lot and any additional updates that come throughout. So when I say parking lot, that is simply the chat. Normally, if we met face-to-face, we will have the parking lot areas. You can go up and add sticky notes with questions you have, but for the sake of today's presentation, the parking lot is going to be the chat. So please, enter any questions in the chat as you see fit. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and he is going to start with the CSPR data and all the updates that you need to know regarding the data files.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hawkins. My name is Eric Hoehn. I work in the federal program section of ALSDE. I've been in this role for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I was a former classroom teacher. I taught in the Montgomery public school system for about 11 years as a high school math teacher. So moving over to this role, I still enjoy being in the field of education, but I appreciate reaching a wider scope and a wider audience and helping you guys with your data management at your LEA level. Now, you've heard the word CSPR from Dr. Hawkins a couple times introducing my portion of the presentation, but what does that mean? CSPR stands for Consolidated State Performance Reports, and what that report is the annual collection of the data from the statewide collection that is submitted to the federal government every year. And that information that gets reported to the federal government in turn helps determine allocations for the following year. So it's essential that at the LEA level and at the school level, the data that you report and maintain throughout the school year is timely and accurate as possible. So one of the components of being a new director is towards the end of the school year, it will be part of your responsibility to certify your LEA's data. Now, what that looks like is typically throughout the school year, you maintain your student data within the PowerSchool platform. And from there, it gets transferred over to the ALSDE Identity Management System, or AIM portal. And within that AIM portal, there are several tiles that that data from PowerSchool feeds to. So as we look here, we can see with this little infographic that your school's PowerSchool data feeds into the student data portal within the AIM portal. And then from that student data tile, it feeds into the 6 federal programs tiles that we maintain in the federal programs section. Now, these 6 tiles are part of what you will certify at the end of the year. So the way that looks, typically at the end of May, beginning of June, typically mid-June, you will certify your PowerSchool data first. And then after that, you will then go into the student data tiles and then certify each of these 6 federal programs tiles. Now, in looking at the 6 tiles, you'll see that we've got SWTA, that stands for School-Wide Targeted Assistance. EL is our English Learners tile. We also have our Homeless tile. We have our Neglected or Delinquent tile for those that receive Title 1D funds. We also have a Foster Care tile. And lastly, we have an Immigrant tile. Now, let's say, for example, you've already looked at these tiles, you've looked at your PowerSchool data, and you see some discrepancies between the two. Typically, whenever PowerSchool feeds into the AIM portal, expect a 24 to 48 hour delay. So if you don't see that immediate change, make sure that you check and give it a little bit of time. And then if it still does not populate correctly, that's when you would reach out to either me or through the ALSDE service desk. But just know that they're to expect some type of time delay when making any data updates to the PowerSchool SIS. Now, my job today is to give you a brief overview of the 6 federal programs tiles, which you'll be responsible for. So for the first one, we're going to start with the School-Wide Targeted Assistance tile, or the SWTA tile. Now, when you log in, one of the main things you want to make sure is that you have access to AIM first. Typically, there is a point of contact within your LEA that assigns those roles within the education directory. And with those roles, you are able to sign into AIM and gain access to these tiles. Now, if that is not the case, you've tried to log in and you don't have any success, the first point of contact would be to reach out to your point of contact at your LEA to make sure that your roles are signed correctly. If you don't find any success there, you are welcome to reach out to the state for support. I don't mind taking calls and helping to diagnose, troubleshooting problems that may occur. Now, in the case where you do have access and you are able to gain access to these tiles, within the first tile, the School-Wide Targeted Assistance tile, you'll see that I have highlighted the second tab, which is called Survey. This is the tab that you would like to click when you certify your end of year data. Now, when you take a look at these screenshots here, you'll see that there's a couple items to view. The first item is the certification settings. You'll see that it has the school year populated. So for this school year, we'll be certifying 25-26 data. And below there, you will see that there is a certification start and end date at the LEA level and also at the ALSDE level. So how that works is typically there is a superintendent memo that gets sent out at the beginning of May listing a calendar of dates. And those dates will be included on this tile. So you'll see here it's not populated yet, But once we determine those dates later, towards the end of the school year, we will populate those dates with the LEA certification start and end dates, as well as the ALSDE start and end dates. Now, the difference between those two dates, the LEA level is your responsibility. And then once it gets to the ALSDE level, that is where the colleagues on my team go and review the data that you certified, and then they go ahead and certify what you certified. So we have those multiple layers of certification to ensure that data is reported accurately and in a timely manner. So if during that troubleshooting period, you may receive a call from the state saying that we've identified a discrepancy, we're going to kick it back to you for review, allow you time to do that review, and then send it back up to us. So once that is all said and done, once all of these data tiles are certified, then comes the CSPR components. All of these data tiles feed into a series of file specifications, they're called, and it all gets submitted in one big data package to the federal government. So that's kind of the flow of the data there. If you look over to the right side, the screenshot with the various colors, yellow, red, and green, you'll see the certification status. Now, this is a statewide count of how many LEAs in the state of Alabama have certified at any given time. So you'll see as we go through the certification process, those percentages will go up. And then the goal is to have, we will have 100% completion by the end of the certification process. Now, lastly, on the bottom, you'll see that when you open the tile, you'll see a breakdown of each of the different columns talking about the details, decision. We've got system code, system name, your certification status with the dates, the status of what the ALSDE decided to certify, and the dates that they did that as well. So a lot of information to view as you're certifying. Now, when you go through the process of certification, like I said in the beginning of this slide, you're going to click on the Survey tab. And just make note that you'll have a series of things to review. Most of this information will be auto-populated from PowerSchool. But what you want to do during this process, to certify fields that are auto-populated, you need to compare the data from this specific tile, so the SWTA tile in this case, and you want to do a side-by-side comparison with the student data tile. So that is another tile within the AIM portal. You want to make sure that that student data tile feeds correctly into those individual 6 tiles. So in this case, you would go to the student data tile, and then you will see a tab for federal programs tab, which I'll show you in a later screenshot. And then there's a selection called students/SWTA. And this is just to ensure that the numbers are matching prior to certifying. Now, just as a reminder, if you have a targeted assistance population within your LEA, those are to be manually marked in PowerSchool. And for that PowerSchool support, there is a whole team of PowerSchool staff that will be there to assist you during that process. As it pertains to the ALSDE federal programs section, we only oversee the 6 federal programs tiles. But if you need assistance, again, you can always reach out to us and we can kind of point you in the right direction of who can best help you and fit your needs. So just as a reminder, that tab for targeted assistance is this 4th one down. So just be reminded that that is a manual component to be marked in PowerSchool specifically. Now you'll see that these 2 private school neglected program are also highlighted. These are manual entry components that are to be done within the tile itself. So you must manually enter your data on the private school and neglected program sections. So your goal is to make sure that throughout the school year, you maintain that information. And when it comes time to certify, it's as easy as going in and filling in that information into the tile. Now, what I'm about to share with you next is a sample of how you would do a comparison of your data between the student data tile and the SWTA tile. If you can see here, here's a screenshot of the student data tile. Previously, I had mentioned, click on the Federal Programs tab, and then under the Federal Programs tab, you'll see Students SWTA. That information from the student data tile feeds into the school-wide targeted assistance tile. So we are looking at the student data tile. We are going to pull up, this is a snapshot table from the student data tile. I have a couple data points highlighted. I've got the EL count of 517, homeless count of 153, migrant 0 in this case, and then special ed 866. Now, when you open up the school-wide targeted assistance tile, you want to do a side-by-side comparison. Make sure that those numbers are matching and everything is flowing correctly. So when I go to the SWTA tile and I look at the student status, I see here that it lists IDEA, or students with disabilities. We see that count of 866. That matches with the student data tile. I see the EL proficient students count of 517. That indeed matches the student data tile. So this is the process you want to go through when you are doing that certification. You pull up the student data tile, you pull up the SWTA tile, do a side by side. Now, when I look at the race and ethnicity, you'll see here that our totals of 4,549 will match between the student data tile and the SWTA tile. And also our Hispanic Latino count of 910 will also match. But you'll notice some other discrepancies here. For example, the Asian population. Within the student data tile, it shows a count of 37. But within the SWTA tile, it shows a count of 33. So why is that the case? Well, you will see differences in values with the exception of the total and Hispanic Latino fields, because state reporting accounts for race and ethnicity, while federal reporting accounts for race or ethnicity. So, i.e. your student data tile, federal programs tab, students SWTA, those values need to equal or be greater than your values from the SWTA tile. If you see that your values from the student data tile are less than what you see in the SWTA tile, that is a discrepancy that you need to let us know about, and we can kind of diagnose what's going on there. But you will always see that the student data tile count is going to be equal to or greater than what you see in the SWTA tile. And this just shows the confirmation that the total counts and the Hispanic Latino counts do match. Now, going back to those two components that are manual entry within the SWTA tile, the private school is one portion of manual entry, and the neglected is another portion. So we define the private school students participating as private school students who were selected to for Title I Part A services and were provided Title I Part A services by an LEA or your school district. And you'll see here that in this snapshot, we're doing a breakdown by grade level. So again, that is something that that information should be maintained from the beginning of the school year throughout the school year. And when it comes time to certify, we fill in those numbers here by grade level. For the neglected column, very similar in a fashion, we're going by grade level. They define local neglected program. It's defined as the locally operated institutions for neglected children who are provided Title I Part A services from the neglected or delinquent Title I-A set aside. Now, this is different than if your LEA received Title I-D funds. So within the Title I-A application and EGAP, you may have a neglected or delinquent population, and your LEA may have chosen to set aside some of those funds for neglected or delinquents. That is separate from if you received Title I-D funds or not. So I just wanted to make that clarification there. It is based off of the Title I-A funds, but specifically the set aside for neglected or delinquent. All right, so we've talked about the first tile, the school-wide targeted assistance. We're going to move on next to the English learners tile. You'll see very similar in fashion. We've got a certification status. We have a summary table. One thing that is different here in the SWTA tile, To certify your data, we had to click the Survey tab. Here in the English Learner tile, you have to click the Data Collection tile. So these tiles were developed at different times. They had different naming schemes. As for functionality purposes, that is probably something we can align moving forward. But for now, make sure that you click on Data Collection for English learners. Now, the data displayed on the App Home tab, again, it's pulled from the Student Data tile. This time, under the Federal Programs tab, you would select Students-EL. Now, just as a general reminder, in reviewing, if these values do not match between the Student Data tile and the English Learner tile or any of the 6 tiles, make sure that you either reach out to me and I can help troubleshoot what's going on, or if you want, another option is to reach out to the ALSDE service desk. And you can see that their email is listed here, servicedesk@alsde.edu. So there's a multitude of resources you can do, so don't feel like you're stuck. We have folks here at the state that will help you through this process as it gets closer to the end of the year. And the end goal here is to make sure that these values are populating correctly, and we want to ensure accurate, timely data. That's the main theme. Now, within the English Learner tile, very similar to the SWTA tile, there are some manual entry components for this as well. And for the English Learner tile, it's all professional development based. So you want to make sure to review and complete all 4 of these tabs prior to certifying. You'll see that there is a training tab, a staffing tab, we've got a student tab, and then a program data tab. And as I look further down the screenshot here, we talk about the different types of professional development activities, which include the title of training, the date that training was provided, number of participants, the intended audience, and then if it was the level of effectiveness. You can see that there is a list of checkboxes here to discuss the type of topics for that PD as it pertains to EL. We can see culture, instructional strategies for EL students, second language acquisition, understanding and implementation of classroom assessment of EL students, and so on and so on. So just as you're reviewing your tiles, make sure that you are paying attention to those various topics and select whichever pertain to your LEA PD trainings. Also below here, you'll see that we are collecting counts of EL students here. Well, not students, but people that participated in those PD trainings. So the number of content classroom teachers that received the PD, the number of EL classroom teachers that received the PD, principals, administrators other than principals, other school personnel that are non-administrative, community-based organization personnel, and then regular classroom teachers. So we are looking for those counts, and for this purpose, we are entering that information manually. So the goal here, just make sure you pay extra special attention to your manual entry components. A best practice, again, is to maintain your personal records of PD counts, topics, etc. throughout the school year. That way, when it comes time to enter this information, you will already have that recorded, and you just translate it over to the tile. So that covers the second of the 6 tiles. Moving on to the third tile, the homeless tile. Again, very similar in fashion. You'll see that we've got the certification status box highlighted in red down here. We'll see that we'll have the school year populated. Now, for your specific LEA, it will auto-populate with your school system, and then you can sort by school to show that individual breakdown, or you can show it as a breakdown of the whole district. So you have some options there. Now, you'll see that I've got a couple items highlighted here. I've got an EL count of 79 highlighted here. I can also see that the enrollment column total has a total of 369 students. And then the McKinney-Vento or homeless population has a total count of 344. Now, the reason for highlighting those 3 is if I do that comparison with the student data tile, in this case, under the federal programs tab, we look at students-homeless to do this side-by-side comparison. You'll see that when I look at the student data tile, there's a bit of a discrepancy there. I'm going to back it up a slide here. You'll see that the EL count had 79 in the homeless tile. Within the student data tile, that homeless count of EL students was 67. There's a discrepancy there. The enrollment count was 369. Over here, it's 315, another discrepancy. And then the McKinney-Bento here was 293 when it was previously 344. So again, why is there this discrepancy? Well, when that data feeds from the student data tile over to the homeless tile, the reason for this is that the student data tile does not account for the withdrawn or dropout students, whereas the table in the homeless portal does. So think of it as the student data tile gives you a certain view, but the individual 6 tiles gives you another layer of detail as far as data. So this homeless portal, or homeless tile, I should say, breaks it down even more by including the withdrawn and dropouts. Now, don't worry though, if you are looking at the student data tile, again, these counts at the top, these are summary counts. If you are looking at the student data tile and you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will see that those totals indeed match. So at the bottom, where we have the total counts, we have our count of 369, 344, and 79 right there. So if you see that it's off in the beginning at the top with those summary data tables, scroll down to the very bottom below where all the student information is, and you will see that those total counts will match what is in the homeless data tile. So just be aware of that. All right, so for our, let's see, our 4th tile, this is the neglected or delinquent. Now this tile specifically is for those LEAs that receive Title I-D funds. This only applies to a handful of LEAs in the state of Alabama. So for those that do not receive the Title I-D funds, you do not have to certify this tile. But for those that do receive those Title I-D funds, you want to make sure that you pay close attention to this portion here. You'll see that same certification box with the due dates and the status. You will, now for this one, this is the majority of this tile is manual entry. So the way that this is broken down, it's broken down by facility type. So you'll see that there's a whole listing of facility types here that you would check. And you want to select all of the applicable facility types. And what will happen is for each one that you click, it will generate a survey for you to complete. So let's say that you had 3 different types of facilities, then you would generate 3 different surveys to complete. So make sure that you categorize yours appropriately and select the appropriate survey to generate. In this next screenshot here, you can see that I've selected community day programs, group homes, and juvenile detention centers. And you'll see that each of those surveys populated after clicking those 3 checkboxes. Now, your job in certifying this tile will be to click on each survey button. And then for each survey, there's about 14-ish questions that you will need to complete that are all, count-based. So counts of students. And you'll see here we've got the number of facilities, the number of students, long-term students, IDA students, and EL students. So it's broken down by those subpopulations. Now make sure that you complete each survey for each facility type. There are some business rules in place where if, let's say, for example, you miss a field, it should prevent you from certifying it. But the overall theme here is, let me back it up here. The overall theme here is you want to make sure that you do not leave any blanks within any of these fields. So if you have 0 counts, please ensure that you put zeros and not blanks. All right, so moving on to our 5th tile, this is the foster care tile. And this one is primarily auto-generated, so there is no manual entry for this one. So your job is just to do an overview of the information presented here. Make sure that it matches with what you have in your PowerSchool records. I believe in the student data tile, there is no foster care tab under the federal programs tab. But so for this one, you would look at what you've submitted in PowerSchool and compare it directly with this foster care tile. Now, one of the features that you can see for all 6 of these tiles, you have the option to choose which columns you'd like to see. So By clicking and dragging and viewing and sorting all of these different tiles, let's say you wanted to generate a report to bring to a meeting to present, you have the option to choose which columns you'd like, and you would do this field. It will either say hide fields or show fields, and by clicking that, it gives you the option to select and choose which one you would like to have in your report that you can generate. And you can also see that you can export it to a comma delimited file, a CSV file, or an Excel file. So a lot of features there. Now, when you go to certify this one, you're going to hit the Foster Students tab, and then from there, you'll be able to certify. Now, again, being a new federal programs director, let's say, for example, that your roles were not set up correctly. Now, in the event that your roles are not set up correctly, on your main page on the AIM portal, you'll see that it may have this banner that says no access. That's an indicator that, oh, I need to reach out to, typically it's the technology coordinator at your LEA. Let them know that I need access to this tile and it's currently saying no access. Now, typically when we assign the roles to the federal programs directors in the LEAs, the technology director needs to know what roles you need. So these are the three. You will need the ability to certify all system data. You would also need the ability to view all school level data. And then you'll also need the ability to view all system level data. Now, if these roles are not properly assigned, again, you're going to see a tile with that no access banner. If you're having trouble, again, you can always reach out to me. If you don't have any luck with your technology director, or you can place a service desk ticket. And again, there's different avenues that you can take to get this resolved. Lastly, of the 6 tiles, this is the final one. This is called the immigrant tile. Now, a couple notes here. This one looks slightly different. You'll see at the bottom of the certification snapshot here, we've got the open and close dates, the status, but at the top of it, you'll see there's a little affirmation checkbox here, just as another point of pause to look and make sure and ensure that you've certified accurately. So the certification statement, the ability to certify the system's immigrant students data may also be available if all the following conditions are met. So if you are an immigrant student certifier for your LEA, the certification period is open for the school you selected, and you have selected the LEA in the system selection options. Again, when your review of the immigrant student data is complete and the data is correct, to start the certification process, you want to make sure that you also check that checkbox to certify that, to the best of your knowledge, that everything contained in this tile is true and accurate. And then you would hit this Certify Immigrant Students button once it's all said and done. Once you hit that Certify button, there will be one final pop-up box that's, are you sure you want to do this? You'll see a confirmation dialog verifying that you intend to certify the data. So that's one final pause to make sure that, just in case we made a mistake, we have the one final option of saying yes or cancel and back it out. Now, when you click the OK button, this immigrant students data will be verified and marked as certified at the LEA level. That then moves up to the state level, where our team here in federal programs will review that information, and then there will be another layer of a yes/no certification at the state level. Now, like I had mentioned earlier, there may be the case where something may be identified, some kind of discrepancy, where we would kick it back. When we kick it back to the school district, we are required to add a comment as to why we kicked it back, and that will initiate that conversation back and forth of what's going on with your school district's data. Let's see. So when the certification processing is totally complete, it's approved at the LEA level and the state level. The certification statement will no longer be displayed, and the certification status panel will be updated to reflect the new status. So all that information will be housed here. Now, in addition to me overseeing the federal programs tiles, I am also the curator of our federal programs YouTube page. you'll see that there is a link highlighted in red there. It's youtube.com/@ALSDE Federal Programs, all one word. Now, I wanted to advertise this because in addition to many resources that are there, one of the options is we have an ALSDE Federal Programs Quick Guide. And this gives you a video tutorial of each of the 6 tiles and how to specifically certify. I know I've presented a lot of information today about these 6 tiles, and it was a general overview, but when it gets closer to that time for you to certify at the end of the year, use this as a resource to kind of dig a little deeper and get some more information about each of the specific tiles. Now, our goal with this YouTube page is to continue to add resources. So you'll see within this quick guide, we've got, we're starting to develop a video series for each of our specific title programs. And then you'll see as another playlist within there, end of year certification or AIM tile overviews, I think it's what it's called. So if you have some time to peruse the YouTube channel, I advise that you do. There's a plethora of resources there. There's old trainings. I believe our new directors trainings from earlier in the year have populated in there. We have ASIP trainings in there as well. So I would do some digging around in there if just know that there are a wealth of resources at your disposal. All right, so as far as who to reach out to, who can help me with these specific problems. So for general technical assistance, again, my name is Eric Hoehn. You can reach me at eric.hoehn@alsde.edu. My phone number is listed there as well. I oversee the end of year data collection, and I oversee the CSPR federal collection that follows. And then I also maintain our section's YouTube page as well. So if you have any general issues with either of those,
I was trying to print.
if you see any issues with either of those, make sure that you reach out to me for that. But if you have a more specific question pertaining to an individual tile, let's say, for example, that you certified the SWTA tile and it got kicked back. The specialist that reviews that, her name is Jennifer Cannell. So you can reach out to Jennifer for more specific details as to why it was kicked back, and you can go through that process of troubleshooting. Now, for the English learners tile and the immigrant tile, that's going to be Becky Wilson, Rebecca.Wilson@alsde.edu. For the homeless tile, we have Miss LaDonna Rudolph. And then for the neglected or delinquent and foster care tiles, we have Ms. Jennifer Adams to help diagnose those issues there. So a whole bunch of different resources there for you, a lot of points of contact. My advice would be, if you have any initial issues, reach out to me first and I can kind of point you in the right direction. If I'm able to help you, I will. But if it's a more specific need that you have, as it pertains to these individual tiles, I may refer you to one of our other specialists to kind of dig a little deeper. So that being said, yeah. So at this time, I've provided my contacts. I've gone through an overview of the 6 tiles. We do have some time, so I know I've been talking a lot. Are there any specific questions that were in the chat or any questions that you may have at this time? My colleagues are saying I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so.
Regarding CSPR.
Yeah, and again, this is regarding CSPR end of year certification.
Yeah, we're gonna give you a minute to type it just in case.
And while you're typing, I know a couple people indicated that they're going through monitoring and probably feeling a little nervous about monitoring. But just know that our monitoring team does provide TA well in advance before they actually come in to monitor. So you will receive a form asking you about the TA support that you need, and they will then reach out and make arrangements to schedule that TA support. So you'll know exactly what is expected during the monitoring process.
Okay, here's a question. It says, for a district that does not report in AIM, are there any specific guidelines we need to be aware of?
Okay. It's my understanding that every school district, oh, if it's a facility type instead of a traditional LEA, for example, if it's DYS, you are responsible for also certifying the neglected or delinquents tile. And, you know, I would recommend reaching out to me for some technical assistance there in tandem with Ms. Jennifer Adams, so we can get you sorted out. Because I've seen in previous certification collections that DYS is one of those that does certify as part of that tile. I hope that answers your question.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, I appreciate Dr. Hawkins for mentioning the compliance monitoring components. I should have mentioned this before too. Myself, I'm actually a new addition to the compliance monitoring team. So in addition to your AIM questions, your YouTube questions, any compliance monitoring questions you have, you can always reach out to me too. Our team lead is Dr. Edward Williams, and also we have Holly Harmon on the team as well, and our staff accountant that works with us, Ms. Angela Russell. But you know, you can call me anytime you want. I'm glad to help out. So. All right. Any other questions while I have you during my time?
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
And if you do have questions, still put them in the chat, and we will come back and address those. So I don't want you to feel like because Eric is done, you can't ask him anything. He'll be here with us.
Yeah, I'm just a phone call away or an email away. I'm pretty responsive.
Okay, now next we will hear from LEA Accounting.
For a second.
Jennifer, just give Jennifer a second. She's getting everything situated. But as Jennifer is presenting, if there's any questions, keep in mind Jennifer is fiscal.
Yeah.
So if it's questions related to fiscal, Jennifer will answer. But any programmatic carryover, I will address after Jennifer is done.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jennie Sasser. I'm in LEA Accounting. I'm sorry. I'm in LEA Accounting, so the fiscal side, definitely. So for the FER, the final expenditure report, each program has an FER that has to be completed. So you will go into the program that you're administrating, and you'll find the grant and click the final expenditures. When you click final expenditures, it pops up in this budget grid type view where you can enter your expenditures by function and object code. But we in LEA Accounting only require you enter your total expenditure. So any open box, you can enter just one amount. After you enter your expenditures, you'll find the carryover portion. And the only part you enter here is the amount to carry over, or if you have to acknowledge that carryover is less than the amount available. Title I has a 15% carryover allowance. So sometimes if you don't spend 85% of your allocation, then you won't be able to carry over the additional amount. That's an example of when you would check the box that carryover is less than the amount eligible. Also, this column that says amount eligible for carryover, if this number is less than what your anticipated carryover is, you'll need to contact your LEA team accountant, or you can contact me or Leah Johnston. The way EGAP pulls the expenditures, like when we're paying the ES2s, sometimes doesn't always jive well. And so we have to go in behind the scenes and make that adjustment for you. So if it looks funky, just reach out to your accountant. On your amount to carry over, if you enter, if your expenditures are less than your cash received, then I skipped around. If your expenditures are less than your cash received, you'll have this negative pending transaction amount here. And federal grants are reimbursement based, so you'll need to return those funds unless it's for like the next month's payroll. That's the only cash on hand you can have. The cash received, if it is less than the expenditures, then an ES2 is automatically generated under this pending transaction amount to give you the remaining cash to cover the expenditures for the fiscal year. So for consolidated only, if you're next year, so if we're doing the FY25 FER, if your FY26 application for consolidated has not been final approved by federal programs, then the FER for 25 cannot be completed. So it's very important that, you know, once the next fiscal year allocations come out, so we're coming up to 27, once 27 allocations come out, go ahead and get your applications submitted and approved so that when we do the 26 FER, it's not being held up by the next year's application not being approved. Also, while the FER will generate an ES2, please, 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 please try not to rely on that. It causes so many problems down the road. You know, it might even mean not getting all of your carryover funds, just with the way the years flow. So once you close the fiscal year, go ahead and make that final ES2 request through EGAP if possible. LEA team accountants will review the FERs, we'll review them and approve them, and then there's one more level after that for ALSDE assistant superintendent approved. Once it gets to that assistant superintendent final approval level, that will load your carryover into EGAP for the next year. For carryover, to request your carryover funds, you have to have an approved budget amendment. LEA has to approve your budget amendment. The financials and FER have to be done so that the carryover loads into EGAP. And then you'll have to go in, complete the EGAP application, submit it, get it through all of the approval levels. Federal programs will have to approve it. Then LEA accounting will review the file uploaded through the AIM portal and compare it to EGAP. Once everything is approved, then the ES2s for the carryover funds can start being requested. For original allocations, as soon as the allocations for the upcoming fiscal year are loaded, go ahead and complete those applications. I think, just as an example, Title I last year was loaded in July. So that meant you could go ahead and complete your Title I application in July, have it submitted by August, you know, way approved before FERs or the fiscal year beginning. So once the EGAP applications have reached final approval and it's after October 1st, you can start requesting ES2s for that original allocation. Kind of as a recap, go ahead and request your ES2s monthly. It's just best practice to do so. It puts less burden on your school's district to go ahead and request those funds. Also communicate with your CSFO. If you're not submitting the ES2s, make sure your CSFO is. And federal funds are not allowed cash on hand, so make sure you already have expenditures or you're about to have those expenditures. And make sure to follow up on all of your EGAP applications, ES2s. Make sure that it gets through all of the approval levels. You know, people are out a day, they come back, they just miss emails. So don't let it sit on someone's inbox waiting for approval. Again, just a recap on when can you request funds. The original allocation, once the EGAP application has been approved and it's after October 1st, you can request those funds for the carryover. You have to have an approved financial statement. The FER has to be approved, loaded into EGAP. The EGAP application has to be approved again, and the budget amendment file submitted to LEA accounting must be approved. After all of that's done, then those carryover funds can be requested. So 2 ways to get those funds are by the ES2 submissions monthly or with the FER approval. And if you have any questions about the ES2 specifically, Jennifer Rodbelt handles all the county payments. Hoehn handles city payments, and Brady Vaughn handles charters. So that's all I have.
We are going to continue to move forward, but please, if you have questions, add them to the chat. Jennie just went over the fiscal aspect of carryover, and now I'm going to talk about carryover in your narrative. Okay, so once you are in EGAP and you go to the allocation page within EGAP, you can tell if your carryover has been loaded. So if you look at the line where the red arrows are, that is where all carryover is loaded. So typically when you're in revision 0, nothing is there, just zeros. And once a number populates there, that's your indication that it's time to budget your carryover. So you will start a revision to budget your carryover. There are 3 ways that we're going to talk about how to budget the carryover within your narrative, or what you can do with your carryover. So the first thing you could do is allocate all of your carryover funds to the district set-asides, to your district initiatives or set-asides. That means instead of sending it to your school, you just budget it all as a district initiative or on the set-asides page. Your second option, you can allocate your funds to your schools. And in order to do so, you will have to PPA out those funds. So the first option, all your carryover could be budgeted as a district initiative. Or your second option is to PPA out your funds and give it to your individual schools. So then the third option is a combination of the 2. You may want to have a certain amount set aside to be added to your district as a district initiative, and you want to also give a portion to your school, and that is possible. You could do one of the 3 or a combination of the 2. I'm going to go further to show you what it looks like when you are going to do any of those options, okay? So here, in order for carryover to be loaded, we have to have a completed revision 0, which means your original application has been submitted and overall approved. So when carryover is loaded, as you see where the red arrow is at the top, we're starting our first revision 1, which is carryover. Now, keep in mind, you can have a revision before carryover. That's totally fine. It will not be loaded when it says revision 0. So revision 1 and above, you could budget your carryover. All right, so if we are planning to allocate our funds to our school, then at the top, the bottom of the top, this particular line item here is where we will enter the full amount that we want to go to our school, to budget later to our schools. Or you could do a portion, either way, but whatever goes to the school must go in this particular box here. Now, the reason why that is important is because this is the only area here at the top portion of the set-asides page where you can add carryover. Okay? Now, going to the bottom where you see this third arrow, it states district set-aside current year allocation, which means carryover is not current year. Carryover is old money. And we cannot add old money below this line. So this reminder, the reason why this is here to tell you current year's allocation, because we don't want you mixing new money and old money. So now you may say, well, how do I budget carryover when I can't add anything? How can I budget carryover as a district initiative when I can't add anything to the bottom of the set-asides page? Well, glad you asked, and we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. So I'm putting this arrow here. So on your PDF copy of the presentation, you'll see a completed page where all of the arrows and red marks are indicated. And the X here indicates that no old money can be added to the bottom of the page. And you may say, why are you saying old money? Remember, because carryover is last year's money, what's left from last year. This year was budgeted in revision 0, so that don't add anything to this year's money. All right, so just a reminder, carryover money is not added to the bottom of the set-asides page. And if carryover is added as a district initiative, this is what you will do. The LEA will place a comment in the comment log, and I'll give you an example of what that looks like here in a minute. Then you're going to update your budget narratives and budget line items to indicate where that carryover is to go for the district initiative. And I'll show you how to do that. And of course, you want to update your application details page to indicate if it's necessary. Won't always be necessary, but if it is. So if you're sending money to the schools, let me go here. So if you're sending money to the schools, it goes here to the PPA page. If it's all a carryover, then that you want to go to the schools, you're going to place that entire dollar amount here. If not, then whatever portion you want to go to the schools will go in this box. Once it goes into the box, it will populate here on the PPA page to be budgeted. Okay. So you see this remaining amount that's going to change once you add the amount to the PPA page, because that's telling you that amount needs to be divided amongst all of these schools until we get to a 0 balance. So, ultimately we want to get, the goal is 0, but as close to 0 as possible, but certainly not exceeding $5, okay? If you have anything $5 or above remaining to be budgeted, then your application will have to be returned to be budgeted. But this is where you will add your dollar amount to get this amount here as close to 0 as possible, all right? So can we stop with this amount remaining? Absolutely not. It's too much money here to be left over in order to go on. So we can't move any further until we divide up that amount amongst our schools, making sure we remain in serving our schools in strict rank order, or however rank order is indicated, grade span grouping or what have you. So you want to give your highest dollar amount to your highest poverty school, and then move down the spiral as needed. All right. So here is what ideally we want the bottom part of our page to look like. 79 cents is fine. We can have that amount left over. We can have $1.79, but we can't have $5.79 because that exceeds $5. And your application will be returned, and we don't want that. Now, that is if you were sending your money to the school, you would still update your narrative accordingly, but the dollar amount budgeted will be divided into on the PPA page for those that are, so you'll know how much of that amount going to each individual school so that your schools can budget accordingly. Now let's look here at the budget narrative. Remember, I told you if you are budgeting at the bottom, if you are budgeting your carryover for the district set aside or district initiative, we can't add any money to the bottom. We have to make the adjustment in the narrative. But this particular example is an example of a narrative that's being PPA'd out, okay? Because here, the original application indicated that there will be 3 classroom teachers at 3 FTEs for a Toggerville school, and then 1 classroom teacher at 1 FTE at Billingsley. Now that the LEA budgeted all of their money to the PPA page, this is how they updated their narrative by just simply adding carryover separate to, and then added an additional teacher. So I have my original amount that was budgeted. Now I'm adding carryover, which I'm adding one additional teacher at one FTE. So that brings me to a total of 5 teachers at 5 FTEs. And you can easily see what's carryover and what's the original allocation. They're not all bundled in there together. It's a clear separation. So when we go to the application details page, we can see the adjustment there as well. But before we get there, here's an example of materials and supplies that's been budgeted as carryover, or here is just a narrative of materials and supplies in the original format, and then how did they add carryover. So you can see the original narrative here. This was probably the last item because they added the dollar amount there, and carryover was added by labeling this portion PPA carryover added for $50,000 towards materials and supplies listed above. So that means this LEA, the original allocation was here. So I'm just adding $50,000 to this $388,000 that was in the original allocation, which is fine. So the specialists know as they're reviewing, 50,000 comes from carryover and original was 388. Nothing that needs to be, you just simply adding to what is already there, unless you want to make a revision to the original allocation. And sometimes, or it's okay to revise the original and add carryover. But in this particular example, the LEA just simply labeled their carryover is PPA, and this is the amount that we're adding to the above narrative. They don't have to rewrite the narrative or anything because they're not adding more items. They're just adding a dollar amount. Now, let's look here at this next portion that's added. Districts set aside for summer enrichment program. Materials and supplies will include classroom supplies, reading intervention materials, and math intervention materials. Now, this part here, this tells me it was already there. But the difference between this part and the top, this was a district set aside, this was a PPA. The top part was, with the exception of this line, was already there. And so was this middle part here. Now they are adding from carryover, $25,000 to that summer enrichment program and materials and supplies. So that's a combination of the original $36,000 plus the carryover $25,000. And what's important here, this section here that says the district set aside carryover $25,000 to summer enrichment program and just the district set aside carryover, that will be added to a comment in the history law because it's the district set aside amount. So as the specialist is reviewing your application and you're writing your application, that is how we identify the carryover amount for the district initiatives or set-asides, because you're clearly labeling it throughout the narrative, although the dollar amount on the original set-asides page will not change. And it will not change because we can't mix old money and new money at the bottom of the narrative. But here is where you are specifying what you are wanting to purchase with carryover. All right, so another example here. Let's look at this particular one. The first one was funds will be allocated for Title I indirect costs according to federal regulations. Okay, so, and then their amendment, they removed the dollar amount here because they're changing it. It was originally 12,000, but they're changing it. They're not adding anything from carryover. Look, hence the label. So the label says this is an amendment. You can say this is an amendment or a revision, either or. It's not labeled carryover because we're not taking anything from carryover. They are still dealing here with just an amendment or revision by taking from the original money, this year's money. So they are changing or making the change by stating and telling you this is an amendment, no carryover, just a change. Indirect costs amended from 12,000 to 10,000. So they are telling me reducing the amount by $2,000 of what we originally had. So they will go place that additional $2,000 in the budget somewhere in the original amount. It will not be placed in a carryover amount because that's the original funds, okay? That is why labeling your narrative is so important. If it's carryover and we're taking from carryover, adding to a particular line item, we label it carryover. If we're taking and adding it to district initiative, we say carryover district initiative. And tell us the district initiative, what it is. It could be professional development, it could be EL, it could be admin costs. Whatever it is, you make sure you tell us that carryover is being added to a district initiative and this is the district initiative. And when it's an amendment or revision, which amendment is the same as a revision, that we use those interchangeably. So I don't think they're two different things. You can label it amendment or revision. We just ask you to be consistent with whichever verbiage you choose to use. Okay, now you notice here, this is the application details. And this is what I mean when you have to update the application details, because in the original application, there was only 4 teachers. Remember, we added that additional teacher with carryover, so that additional teacher has to reflect here on the application details page. So make sure any personnel that we add with carryover, we are updating the application detail page to indicate so. All right, and we budget out our remaining amount. Just a little reminder again. All right, so place overall, once we receive our carryover, we have to make one or two choices. One of 3 choices. PPA out the amount, or we're going to budget it as a district initiative. How are we going to indicate what we're budgeting as a district initiative? We're going to place a brief comment in the history law indicating the changes that's been made throughout the application when it comes to carryover, your carryover funds in general. So especially telling us the set aside funds, so that's kind of check and balances what you said in the history law compared to what's listed in the application. So here's a brief example of what you would give us in the history law. Overall, in this application, the changes that was made, 25,000 in carryover funds was added to the district set aside for a summer enrichment program. Additional carryover funds of 175,000 was sent to schools for salaries and benefits, materials and supplies, and technology. And you made the adjustment to your teachers from FTEs and from 4.0 to 5.0 because we added 1 teacher. And you amended the indirect costs from 12,000 to 10,000. This is just helping us double check that your intentions were actually executed in your narrative. So it's just really a check and balance because it's not visible for us to see on the set asides page. So we just want to double check what is budgeted in that narrative is actually what you intend to budget by that overall summary in the history law. Okay. You want to update your budget and your narratives to indicate so, and make sure as you're updating your narratives that you update the budget line items, okay? And the application details should reflect the necessary changes that have been made throughout the application. And what's most important, ensure all carryover funds are budgeted. We cannot budget a portion of our funds. if we PPA out all those funds or budget a portion for carryover, your narrative and budget should reflect every penny, whether it's on the set aside, whether it's a district initiative or if it was PPA out to the school. All right, any questions?
Got a few questions in the chat.
And Trevor said that his carryover and adjustments, that was a challenge to take on your first year. And it can be a challenge. And let me tell you what's more of a challenge when you want to do a revision and budget carryover in a narrative. You can do that, not in a narrative, in one application, that's fine, but make sure you are clearly labeling what is a revision and what is carryover. Sometimes we get applications that changes are made, changes are all made with no labels. That's very hard to follow. We can follow it, but just know it takes that much longer for you to get an approved application, or we may have to reach out multiple times asking, is this your intent? Because you sometimes, as the LEA, know exactly what you want to do, and because you know what you want to do, you may assume that we can figure it out or that we know what you're doing and maybe forget to label this is a revision versus this being carryover. And that makes it just challenging. So if nothing else, I would recommend just budget your carryover in the first revision and then come back and do a second revision with your actual revision of the current money. But that's me. That's not what you have to do. If you can do it in a manner to remain organized, by all means, or if you have questions on how to do it, you reach out to your specialist because they are the ones that's reviewing it and they will help guide you through how to make a revision and budget carryover at the same time. But you just don't overthink it. Just label your intent and we will definitely be able to follow or be able to give you support. Let's see.
And that's kind of why I mentioned it, because I wanted people to know. And it ended up working out okay, and y'all and everybody helped just fine. But just all that coming in at the same time, that adjusted, plus the carryover and being new and not knowing. I'm not afraid to ask questions and send emails. I think y'all have probably figured that out.
And we welcome that, Trevor. So,
yeah,
and
I just wanted to mention that.
I'm so glad you unmuted it because there's nothing like hearing it from, that side of the table. Because it is challenging. And Trevor, you did say adjustments, which I completely forgot about. Sometimes your allocation will adjust. The original allocation will adjust. And you may have to add to or take away from the original allocation. And that typically happens in January. So that will be another revision and you have to make that adjustment. Or sometimes schools may change their mind and want to do something different with the money they have, and you have to revise the application. Those things can get challenging, especially trying to do multiple things in one submission. So if you need to do it, if you have to send us 5 revisions because you want to separate, that's fine. I know a lot of CSFOs may say you only get 2 revisions a year. That is not ALSDE. That is your district, and I understand you have to adhere to your district, but I don't want you to think we are limiting the number of revisions that can occur within a year, because we do not. Final allocations normally load around January. So, and that's just sometimes we have to adjust those because just for various reasons. I wish there was a way around it, but it's really not. Right now, we're going to transition a little bit to talk about planning for the upcoming year. And what we're going to do is go through the AIM portal, in particular, the socioeconomic indicator tile. If you do not have access to the towel in the AIM portal, then you definitely want to reach out to either your superintendent, or a lot of times it's your tech coordinator, which your superintendent or the person he has designated to update your EDR to ensure that you have the proper credentials for each of those towels and access in EDR as the federal program director. So if you do not and you need help in doing so, put your name in the chat so we'll just know who does not have access and make sure you receive the correct guidance in getting and gaining access. So what I recommend, if you have dual monitors during this presentation and you can pull AIM up and walk through the tile as I explain it, I totally recommend you doing so. And if you don't have a dual monitor or like a laptop and a desktop, something where you can listen to me as I walk through it, then that's fine, because we're going to give you time to practice. But this is what you I don't want to tell you what you should be doing or need to be doing, but what we strongly encourage you to be doing starting now, March, planning for the upcoming year. So in July, when your application, your funds have been loaded and you can start your application, there's no reason you're not ready to submit August or September after your schools have started, because the earlier you submit, the earlier you have access to start using those funds. We don't want to be submitting December, January. Now, we can do revisions then, but we shouldn't be submitting original applications that late, because that's half the year that has passed us and we haven't used any of our funds. And we want to use this year's funds on this year's students. So let's start planning for the 2026-2027 school year now. So I'm talking now just to give you time to access the AIM portal and pull up the socioeconomic indicator tab. Okay, now the data that I am going to review in the towel for you is collected or was collected in 2025, October, the third Friday in October of 2025. That poverty data was that snapshot takes place every year, the third Friday in October. So that's a very important date. Prior to that date, you want to make sure all of your students are enrolled and properly labeled as far as their gender. Everything is properly labeled before that third Friday, and they're all in your system. Because if they are not in the system, they cannot be accounted for. So you want to make sure all of your data is correct as much as possible. All of your schools have correct data as much as possible before this date, because the actual snapshot for your poverty percentage and student count, enrollment, all that comes from this particular report, which is this snapshot is taken the third Friday in October of every year. And this snapshot is what is populated in the AIM portal, in particular, the socioeconomic indicator tab. Okay, and we're going to walk through how to access that data. All right, here is a snapshot. Once you log in to AIM, you can simply put the address right here at the top into your Google search and it will come up. You will log in with your credentials, and here is the tile that we use here in federal program, which is the socioeconomic indicator tile. Once you log in with your credentials, you're going to go to this particular tile, the socioeconomic indicator tile, and here is what you're going to see. There's a drop down. The first thing we want you to do is select the 2026 data. This data for the 2026-27 school year, but it was taken in the 25-26 year. So that it should be the very top one. And I'm talking slowly because I know the portal Takes time to populate. It's not a fast moving portal. All right. The next step, select your system. Oh, sorry. Select your system, and then you want to make sure you select the fall. All right, your name of your system, and then the collection is the fall collection. Now, there are other collections that you see, CEP and a couple other, those are same data, but it's taken at a different time. So we hear a lot, well, not as much, because we've made LEAs aware that sometimes the poverty data you may get from CMP is different than the data that you see populating the EGAP or in the fall collection. That's fine. It's different because CEP takes their snapshot at the end of the year. We take ours in the fall. So that's totally fine. Same data, just a different picture, period of time. So it may look different. We want you to base your planning on the fall collection. And this is what it should look like overall. If you do not have access to that towel, please reach out. You may already know who to go to, but your superintendent or his or her designee has designated someone to update EdDir. That's your education directory. More than likely, it may be your tech coordinator for your district. Most of the time, that's who it is. Send them an email to tell them, I make sure that you are labeled as the federal program director for your district and EdDir and the tile that you need access to. So if you don't have access, just put your name and LEA in the chat and just say don't have access to the tile, to socioeconomic indicator tile, and Brittany will send you some information. Also about the tile, EdDir. EdDir is how we communicate or retrieve your information to communicate with you. So at any point, if you're not getting emails from us, like if your region tells you, hey, we have this meeting and we received this email from federal programs, but you didn't, because we pull from EdDir all the federal programs directors, and we've seen on occasions where we have federal program directors who have left the district but are still there. You want to take them out and update it with your information. So please be sure every year you're making sure your information is in EdDir as the federal programs director. Once you are in, you will see an entire long list of labels. This is much longer. For the sake of the presentation, I kind of chopped it up. You only see sections that's kind of relevant to what we're talking about. But if you're looking at yours, you will see more of those subtitles than you can see on the screen, which is totally fine. Now, your district level data and school data will automatically populate a few days after the 20th day count. It's not going to be instant. I've even had some LEAs to reach out and say, hey, it's the end of October and I don't see our data. That's fine. Sometimes our IT just have not turned it on for you to view. And if you reach out and if you don't see it and you reach out because it's going into November, it's okay to reach out and say, I don't see it, because I may just need to email them to say, hey, make the data visible. They just haven't had a chance to do so. So don't feel like you just got to sit and wait on us. Now, to see your school level data, you just simply click here, the highlighted yellow box that's trimmed in red, that just hit that plus sign there, and it's gonna expand the file, so you can see your schools and not just your district. So for the sake of this presentation, I'm using Barber County, but right now, I mean, sometimes it's gonna say Otago County. So don't get caught up with the change in the data or the change in the district. It's still the same regardless of districts that I'm in. It's just some have can show more than others because of the size and different things. That's why it's important for you to be looking at your information so that if you have questions or discrepancies, you're able to ask. All right, so now this is what it looks like to expand. This is just a closer version. You see the district at the top, and then we see our schools here at the bottom. Now, right now, I want to point out one thing. I'm talking about Barber County High School. The first column after the school's name is going to be your enrollment. This number is the actual number of students enrolled on the third Friday in October of 2025, okay? Of that whatever school year. It may not be what's enrolled today. That's fine. Remember, we are working from a snapshot, okay? We do have live data in there and other parts of the portal. We don't ever work from the live data when we're talking about the poverty level and planning for next year. We work from the portal count. So that's your snapshot of enrollment at that particular time, which is what we're going to base everything, your poverty percentage and everything on. That's why it's important for your data to be as accurate as possible, because once that snapshot occurs, it is what it is. Okay, so next column we have, this is your actual number of students enrolled who qualifies for free reduced lunch, okay? So out of the 268 students enrolled at Barber County High School, 217 qualifies for free lunch, all right? Which gives us a poverty percentage of 80.97 if we're talking just strictly by free lunch. And how did I get that number? I just simply divided the number of the number of students who receive free lunch by the total enrollment to get that percentage. Next, we have our reduced. This is the number of students who qualifies for reduced price lunch. And then we have the percentage of reduced, which is 2.24. How did I get that? Simply take the number of students that qualify for reduced and divide it by the total enrollment, and I get a total of 2.24. All right. I can combine them, which is 200. Combine means I'm adding my free students plus my reduced students, which gives me a total of 223. And that is exactly what you will do if you are not CEP. If you're not CEP, this is the column you would look at to obtain your actual free, your actual poverty percentage, student count, which is 223. Now the percentage of free and reduced here is 83.21%. So if you're non-CEP, this is the number that you will see populate in EGAP as your poverty percentage, okay? All right, now moving on, CEP. If this box is checked, this is this box indicates that your school was CEP in the previous school year, okay? That school may have become CEP this year, but like in this school year, but this box will not be selected if that happened. Doesn't mean you're not CEP though. You still will be CEP. The box is only indicating that you became CEP in the previous school year. That's it. All right. In the previous school year or before. Okay. Here, this box just indicates if the school is served as school-wide or target assistance with Title I Part A at the time that this snapshot was taken. All right, next we have our two provisions, and this is just selected if you were provision 2, and it will indicate the year that you were provision 2, but I don't think we have any anymore that are provision 2, or I could be wrong. Now, this box indicates the first school year the school participated in CEP. So for you new federal program directors, you may want, if you need to know the first year, because that indicates your cycle of, because you're on for 3 years. But the reapplying or the application process will occur more so in child nutrition than in federal programs. But if your director, child nutrition director needed to know because they are new and you knew, here is where you could find that information on when that particular school's first year is being CEP. Now, this will be the free plus reduced number if the school is not CEP. If your school is CEP, and we'll talk about the multiplier here in a minute, okay? Remember I said earlier where the free plus reduced number is your poverty percentage. This is the number here. If you are CEP, this is the number that we're going to use to either add the multiplier to it or not, okay? So if you're non-CEP, you use your free plus reduced percentage, okay? If you are CEP, we're going to focus on your free number when we talk about adding the multiplier or not adding the multiplier, okay? So just keep that in mind. Okay, and this would be your percentage if you are CEP, all right? This will be the percentage that you use if you're not using the multiplier. All right, so if you are using your multiplier, this will be your recalculation student count number. Just to give you a little background regarding CEP and how it impacts federal programs. I'm not going to go into great details, but just a gist. Okay, so the purpose of CEP was to eliminate a lot of paperwork that students may turn in or they may not turn in, okay? So it's to reduce the paperwork for the most part, okay? Then if we reduce the paperwork, that means if we're CEP, we don't send home free reduced lunch applications anymore. That stops when you become CEP. Well, when that stops, that made it hard for federal programs to have an accurate number student count of our poverty percentage. We then only had the student count from our direct certification, okay, which is this number here, the 217, all right? So keep in mind, 217 doesn't account, I mean, it's high for this example, and you will see in other examples, probably in your district, it's not as high or as close to the total enrollment. But for instance, this number, 217 of those students are in poverty or are accounted for because of 5 indicators through direct certification. That means they are directly accounted for because they either receive some type of governmental supplements, okay? And it's high now because Medicaid is one of those factors when it didn't used to be a factor. So any of those governmental supplements that is identified for a student to be directly accounted for as poverty, that feeds automatically into our portal, our socioeconomic indicator portal from the state, okay? So those students are accounted for without us sending any type of paperwork home asking parents of their income, okay? So that reduced students having to be embarrassed, having to bring in lunch applications with their parents' income. It eliminated all of that. And that was one of the benefits of CEP. So this is your number of students who are directly certified. So if So with that stated, it still doesn't account for those students who kind of doesn't receive the supplemental services from the federal government, but the income still would qualify. So that's when the 1.6 multiplier is a factor and we get to add it to our student population or multiply it, because that will account for the remaining of students who fall within that gap of not receiving government supplements, but we still don't have access to their income. So we take the students that are that number, which is 217, and we multiply it times that 1.6 to give us a recalculated student number of 347.2, but we don't have a 0.2 student, so it's going to be 347 students. But the caveat there is that puts us above the enrollment. So if I multiply 217 times 1.6, you see that that exceeds my 100%, right? So my poverty percentage here is 129%. Well, we can't get over 100. So what you will see populate in EGAP is 100%. That means 100% of your students would receive free or reduced lunch. Remember, reduced is not accounted for with CEP. That's why we use the multiplier. So if you're non-CEP, we use your free plus reduced. If you're CEP, we only use the free and the multiplier. I hope that's clear. Now I'm going to transition to my options if I am CEP. All right. If you are CEP, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just go here. So this is my percentage, and I tell you about in EGAP that it will appear as 100%. So let's go a little bit further before I get off. Now, your first year, there is a first year CEP exception. So if you are CEP and this is your first year, one, the box will not indicate that you're CEP, and your recalculation will not have the multiplier. So you would have to manually do your calculations if you want to pre-plan by using your data in the portal. If a school's first year CEP is the current school year, then in the portal, it will not show the recalculation with the multiplier, but you can still do it manually. How would I do that? I'm simply just going to take my free number and multiply by the 1.6 multiplier to get my recalculation amount. That's only if this is your first year or you became CEP within this year, okay? It doesn't populate for you. You just have to manually do it for the schools that is currently CEP and was just identified this year. So you just, step one, take your free number, multiply by the 1.6 multiplier. When we go into our breakout groups, these are the things that we're going to be able to work on in a smaller setting. You will know because your first year CEP will say 2026 or 2025. You're not going to see that recalculation over there. You're going to see that free plus reduce, and we're going to take that free number, multiply by the free student count, multiplied by the 1.6 multiplier, and that's going to give us your recalculation number for low income, your low income recalculation amount. All right. And then that recalculated student amount, we're going to divide it by our enrollment to get our percentage. Let's look at this example that's before us. All right. If we multiply our free number by 1.6, what number? Our free number is what? 566, right? Here at the top. This is our free number, 566. We're going to take that number and multiply by 1.6. And that gives us 905.6, but we can't have any point students. We only have whole students, so that's going to be 905 students, okay? Now, that number is the number that you're gonna see on your building eligibility page, okay, will be 905. Now your step 2, now we need to get the student count into a percentage. So we're gonna divide that recalculation free number count by your overall enrollment, which here, we're gonna take that 905, which is that recalculation amount, and our enrollment is what? 924. So we do the 905 divided by 924 to give us 97.94%. And that is what we're going to see on the building eligibility page as our recalculated low income percentage, 97.94. You will only have to do this manually if this is your first year CEP. If it's not, then that data is already calculated for you in the last column on the right-hand side of that particular column grid. Now we're gonna rank and serve. When we're ranking and serving, I'm going back. Non-CEP. If my schools are not CEP, I'm gonna rank and serve using my free reduced percentage, okay? For my non-CEP schools. If I'm not CEP, that means I collect lunch applications. I know the actual numbers because I'm collecting this information from my parents. So I'm gonna, the free students count and the reduced count towards my poverty percentage. All right, next, if any schools are CEP in the district has to decide, do we want to use the 1.6 multiplier or we don't? You may say, well, I thought we had to use the multiplier. No, it's available if you want to use it. Because you're CEP, you have a choice to use it or not. If you're non-CEP, you can't use it. The only thing you can use is free reduced lunch percentage. If you're CEP, you want to make the decision to use the multiplier or not use the multiplier. If using the multiplier, the 1.6 multiplier, use the recalculation of the low income times the multiplier percentage to rank all of your schools, okay? So you'll take the recalculation student count number times the multiplier to get, and then divide to get your percentage, and you're going to use that to rank your schools. If not using a 1.6 multiplier to rank your schools, you're only going to use the free percentage to rank the schools. So if you're CEP and do not want to use the multiplier, you only can use the free percentage. You can't use the free plus reduce. That's not accurate. You can't use that. You can only use the free percentage. Now, as your schools are CEP, you can do one or the other. You can't do a combination of free percentage and the recalculation with the multiplier percentage. You can't do that for some CEP schools and then use free percentage for other CEP schools. That bottom part is either all or none. You made the choice to use the multiplier or you made the choice not to use the multiplier. Okay, so the question you should be asking yourself, how do I know if I need to use the multiplier or not? I'm glad you asked. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but more in detail in your small group, okay? But right now, before I tell you why, let me tell you some things that you have to know. You should know when you're ranking and serving. For your high priority schools is any school that exceeds 75% poverty. Any school that exceeds 75% poverty exceeds that, so that's 75.1%. You must serve those schools. So that's something you want to keep in mind when you're considering using a multiplier or not. So if you add the multiplier to a school and they exceed 75% poverty, when you add that multiplier and you don't normally serve them, you may want to consider not adding the multiplier, okay? Now, also, schools that are 75% poverty or higher, they must be served in strict rank order by the poverty percentage. There is no grade span grouping here. Those schools must be served by poverty percentage in strict rank order. No flexibility for grade span grouping. All right, and you can also include high schools that exceeds 50%. Doesn't say you have to, you can include them in the strict rank order. But if you set the standard to do that, you can't alternate it. It's all or none. But what's not all or none is the 75% the 75% poverty or higher is a must. They must be served, and they must be served in strict rank order. Now, your low priority schools, any school that's at or below 75% poverty is considered a low priority school. Now, you're not required to serve them with title funds, but you can. They qualify. You may serve them, but you're not required. So that's the flexibility that you want to consider when having to add the multiplier or not. Okay? Now, and they may be served in strict rank order, or you can serve them by grade span grouping. So that's another caveat that of things that you should consider. So we planned, if it was 12:30, to stop here and take lunch, but we're going to keep going at least for this next section, because we're going to give you probably about 10 minutes to right now, instead of taking a lunch break, we're going to give you about 10 minutes to make sure you have your data, get access to your portal, kind of think about what I just shared, and we're going to come back at 10:50. And at 10:50, I'm going to go over one thing with you, and then we're going to go into our breakout rooms, and we're going to put into play for your district what the examples and the information that I just went over. So take about 10 minutes, pull your data, make sure you have access if you can. If you have any questions, we still will be here. Put them in the chat and we will address them once we start back. We're gonna just wrap up this particular part of the presentation. That's just part 2 with a few more slides. All right, so I want to kind of go over this example with you so that you fully understand what I need you to do. It really is done for you. You will only have to do this if this is your first year or you became, your recalculations are not there. So let's look at Cleveland Elementary School. Here, Cleveland Elementary enrollment, 463 students. Their free number is 231. So their poverty percentage is 49.89. If Cleveland Elementary is not using a multiplier, all right, then they would just calculate the poverty percentage using a free number. Here, the recalculation free number, which would be the 231, their free percentage time the multiplier, gives them a recalculation of 79.70% poverty. Big difference between the 79.70% poverty and 49%. With that multiplier, Cleveland Elementary must serve this particular school. Without the multiplier, they don't have to serve the school. They must serve in strict rank order using the recalculated poverty percentage. So this is an example of what it will look like and what you're doing. Because Jennifer Cannell, she is going to send an email out toward the end of the year for the upcoming year to ask you if you want, before we load the information in eGap, she's going to ask if you want to use the 1.6 multiplier or if you do not want to use the 1.6 multiplier and you want to already have worked through these examples and know how you want to rank your school so you can make an adequate decision by using a multiplier or not using a multiplier. Okay, so if the district chooses to use the 1.6 multiplier, then Cleveland Elementary School will exceed the 75% poverty and must be served with Title I Part A funds in strict rank order. So if there are any schools in your district that you are not wanting to serve because you never served them in the past, then you want to know whether to use the multiplier or not. Because you only get the allocation, the total allocation amount that you receive is going to be the same. That doesn't change. You're just determining, do I want to divide this amongst all of my schools or those schools with the greatest need? So choosing to use the multiplier or not does not change the allocation. And you have the same allocation whether you're serving 5, 10, 15 schools. You get to decide who is served if the poverty percentage does not exceed 75. But the pot of money, your allocation is going to be what it is regardless. None of these things have a factor on the total allocation received. All right, so the goal of the breakout room is to work through this process at using your real numbers and your real schools and asking for support if you need support in determining who to serve, who not to serve, or what option you may choose. So the goal is for you to walk away knowing exactly who you're going to serve and whether you will use the multiplier or not use the multiplier, and then in what order you will rank your schools. That's the ultimate goal here. Just keep in mind, if you are a mixed district, meaning some of your schools are CEP and some of them are not. With the schools that are not CEP, we use the free reduced count. With the schools that are CEP, we use the free count times the multiplier, okay? So these are scenarios that in your individual groups, if you have questions or you don't quite understand, then we'll be able to provide you with that additional support, okay? So right now, Amanda is going to start.
Okay, so I'm about to open the breakout rooms, and you'll see a message pop up that says the breakout room is available. You should be able to choose your own room, and we've named the rooms based on the regions. So there's actually a room for each of our administrators in the regions that they're over. But it actually works out to be about 5 different rooms. So look for your region in the room name, and that will, if you hover over that room, or well, one instruction I saw says you hover over it. Another one, or what I had to do on mine this morning is there's like 3 small dots on the right side, and I had to click on that, and it gave me an option to join, and then you hit join. Okay. If you guys get done early and you want to come back to the main room, you go back to the same place, and it gives you the option to return to the main room. And if you're not sure what region your LEA is in, then please put that in the chat. Just put your region name in the chat, and I can let you know really quickly what your region is. We also found this morning that I guess it depended on the version of Teams or I don't know. I'm not exactly sure why, but some of us had the rooms option at the top of our screen and some did not. So if you don't have the rooms option, then you can also let us know that, and I can put you into a room. So those that are going into my room, which would be region 6 and 11, please just be patient for a few minutes while I get everybody into their rooms, and then I'll come join you. So I'm not sure if our other specialists from our teams are going to be in there today because they all had something else going on. But in case I am not there, and just hold on for a minute and give me a chance to kind of help everybody get into their rooms, because I'm the organizer of this session today. Okay, so the rooms are now open, and you should have up at the top a panel that says rooms. It's like a square with like another square inside of it, and you should be able to go to your rooms. But if you can't, let me know, or if you're not sure what region you're in. Now, if you're a charter, you can go to whichever one you want to. We didn't put you guys in a specific room because y'all don't have to really worry about this. But if you just want to participate here in case you ever go to a region.
who wants to unmute and share kind of anything that you, looking at your data, any aha, any this makes sense, any, put it in the chat or unmute and kind of share, I need more help. Let us know where you stand with this process so that we can be sure that you clearly understand when you make the decision to use the multiplier, not use the multiplier, or what have you, knowing what numbers that you're looking at and how you're going to rank your schools.
It's a pretty easy choice for us in Crenshaw because we're such a high poverty district. We're going to go CEP across the board. There's just no reason not to.
All right, so that means you're adding a multiplier and just ranking accordingly. Rhonda said her school only has two, her district only has two schools and they're CEP, so she's good. Tiffany, I'm glad this was helpful. Please let us know if you still confused or need additional support. This is why we create these sessions, because you're new and we want to give you what you need.
All right, everyone, we hope you had a great lunch, and we are going to come back now and start off with our last presentation. We have Meg Copeland here from Title IV. All right, everybody, thank you for being here today. Happy Friday afternoon. I'm just going to go over a few things, and I know that there were different sort of timeframes that we were all talking about today, and this really is more in preparation for your next year's application so that they get off to the right foot. And, you know, they won't get returned as often. So quickly, my name is Meg Copeland. If I haven't had the pleasure to meet you, I am out of our Birmingham office here, and I work as part of support services with Title IV and 504, Title IV-A. We're going to quickly go over Title IV-A's background. I think going over the background and purpose makes decisions later not nearly as confusing. And the importance of staying true to the spirit of Title IV-A, sort of in that same vein. We'll talk quickly about documentation requirements, common requests, things we often note as we're returning things back. And as always, which is not specific to Title IV, but supplement, not supplant. This is just our contact information. Right now, the team consists of myself and Miss Brenda Rumley. Our email addresses are there. That is the direct line to my desk. So anytime you have a question, I don't at all mind if you reach out. Also, this morning I was at another training, and I know I've got a voicemail or two waiting for me from yesterday late afternoon. So if you are one of those people, I will be calling you Monday morning, if not before. Okay, so sort of the origins, where did this come from? Title IV-A was part of the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's for student support and academic enrichment. And I think, again, if you remember part of this, it makes decisions about spending much clearer. So it's one of the provisions to support student successes. It's intended to help meet those goals by increasing the capacity. I'm not going to read all these slides, but I am reading this one. Of state agencies, local agencies, schools, and communities to do three particular things. And always rural districts come to my mind, and also more impoverished districts, because it is helping them give their children opportunities that other students may enjoy. So the first is to provide all students with access to a well-rounded education. We'll talk about what that means in a bit. To improve school conditions for learning. This is where some of our safety things come into play. And then finally, to improve the use of technology in order to improve the academic achievement and digital literacy of students. We will spend a minute talking about this last one because people get really creative and not in a positive way with some of their technology. So we'll talk about what does that mean and what does that not mean. So here in Alabama, Title IV-A, as you all well know, I'm sure, is part of the consolidated grant application. And again, the first sort of bucket or category that spending is appropriate for is well-rounded education. It ensures access to things like arts and music education. This can be things from instruments to after-school classes, sort of opportunities.
Also things that have to do with STEM. STEM materials are expensive and often consumable. And so that's something we see a lot of Title IV spending for, and it's completely appropriate. Next is accelerated learning opportunities. So for example, if you're a small, isolated rural district and you have only 2 children for whom IB or AP might be an interest, this portion can help you make that more accessible to all of your students, and those 2 might then turn into 10 or more. And the same for college and career counseling. Just again, opportunities for those students to enjoy the same opportunities. I need to think of a different word for that, but next is safe and healthy students. So possible focus areas could be mental health programs. As we all know, post-COVID, that seems to have risen to the top. Also, bullying and harassment prevention, suicide prevention, physical, healthy, active lifestyles, and establishing community partnerships. I'll say this is the area that we see most bringing in of outside organizations, whether that is like a community outreach sort of thing, or after school or summertime. They're all different kinds of things that we've seen schools really use these funds for to improve their students' experience in school. Now, one of the things that people like to spend money on this for, and it is appropriate, is anything that has to do with safety. So while there's the mental health thing and the social part, like suicide prevention or bullying, mental health, there are also very concrete things like security cameras or SROs or half our doors don't lock. That might be problematic. So anything with safety can also be appropriate here. We'll touch on supplement, not supplant again later, but all of those things have been used and appropriately used. Have used this money for those things. Training for your staff. Those are just some suggestions, some ideas. And finally, effective use of technology. This Title IV-A is about opportunities for to enable student academic success. So oftentimes, after COVID, I think most of us have the infrastructure we want, meaning we don't need necessarily another laptop or whatever. So that's really not the issue, but I think people try to get a little too creative with these funds. And I always say this, but just because it has a power button does not mean it's an effective use of technology. You need to be able to tie that back to student success, not just my teacher found this really cool thing and it's going to be way easier for her to keep her grades together. That's not what this is for. This is for helping students be more technologically savvy or to help their learning by way of technology. So again, not just because it turns on, literally, is it appropriate for this division or portion. So there are 2 different grant award recipients, requirements for Title IV-A, and they have fairly significant differences in what is required of the LEA. So one, if your allocation is under $30,000, and the other is if you are greater than or equal to 30. So we'll go bit by bit and talk about what's required and what we need to see from both of those. So if it's under 30,000, monies may be spent in any or all of the categories. We'll talk about minimums and maximums in just a sec, but in this one, right now you can't spend more than 15% in effective use of technology. If you're under 30, though, that's really your only. It still needs to be appropriate for Title IV, but there are no minimums or maximums otherwise if it's under 30,000. If it's greater than or equal to 30,000, at least 20% of it must be spent in well-rounded. And again, that was things like IB, AP, dual enrollment, STEM, art, all those sorts of things. At least 20% of your total allocation must be spent in safe and healthy, and that can be mental health, physical health, literal safety, in the school building. And then again, this is similar in both. No more than 15% of your total allocation can be spent on technology. So if you are a district and your allocation is under 30,000, there are only a couple of things that we need from you. One is the stakeholder council signatures, and I had this here for you to know. First, all of the templates and documents we'll go through today are found in a few different places, but one of them is in the Title IV-A required document section in EGAP. Also, I know that it's overwhelming and there's a million different pieces, especially for those districts who get more, but we as educators are the worst about not reading things sometimes. And so I think so often, if we just slow down and read some things, it would mean we had way less back and forth and sending back for revisions. But here, if you'll see the stakeholder council, it gives you ideas of who that should be. We realize that this is reality and you can't compel a judge to attend, but this is just what you're shooting for. Also, another caution, and I take this from an actual occurrence. If your name is Appleseed and you are the federal programs person and your husband teaches at the high school and his name is Appleseed, and you have a high schooler and her last name is Appleseed, it's kind of draws the eye if I only have 9 signatures and 3 of them are Appleseeds. So maybe just think about that. We want that to be as representative of a wide range of people as we can. So the signatures, and if you'll notice, it needs to be in blue ink. And that would be true for any legal binding document. And then also the meeting agenda. So, we just kind of know what you talked about. Now, there is, in this day and time, Zoom is the thing, Teams is the thing. We just need something, whether it's an email or a chat or something, so that we can know for sure. For example, the mental health department rep was there and it was virtual and he or she agrees to whatever y'all discussed. Yeah, so that's all if you are under 30,000. If you are greater than or equal to 30,000, and I put it in a circle because if you do this correctly, it takes a lot of the guessing out. It takes a lot of the but what ifs out, I think. So you'll have your stakeholder council signatures, that's the same, and the agenda. Everything should come from a needs assessment. And the needs assessment is driven by data. And I know that if you've been in the classroom in the last decade, that is a phrase of which you are quite weary. However, if you have completed your needs assessment and that is part of your stakeholder meeting agenda, everything should flow from that. So there shouldn't be later a question, but what about so-and-so? Because if it's not part of the needs assessment, then we should not be spending money on that thing. So you complete your needs assessment. Those can be based on things like attendance data, truancy data, behavior, discipline, parent surveys, teacher surveys, just data, not just because, someone at the central office got a wild hair about something they heard that sounded cool. So needs assessment drives your goals and objectives. This means in the next year, here's what we're shooting for. We hope to achieve with this money. Now, can they see that? Do I need okay. That one. That's fine. Okay, sorry. Your goals and objectives comes from that needs assessment. So if your needs assessment established that your whomever, stakeholders or teachers think you all need to really beef up your math in grades 3, 4th, and 3rd, 4th, and 5th, then your goals and objectives should reflect that. If there is nothing in your needs assessment about, a need, then it shouldn't be in your goals and objectives. So one should lead to the next, which then leads to budget details. And this would be a good time for me to point out, this is one of the times that we need you to read. And I don't mean that at all in a condescending way. It's a huge task. But right above where you put details, it says, if you're doing PD, what's it for? Who's going? How much does it cost? If you're buying supplies for band, what are they? Where are they coming from? So generally, if we send back an application for a little more information, it's really just those questions that we need answering. And I know it would frustrate me to have to go back and forth a lot. So just think about, those little questions in italics over the budget details and think, okay, have I answered that? Next is the assurances. That is just your superintendent's signature that he or she will uphold and abide by the Title IV-A things. And again, all of these documents, the templates are in the required documents section for Title IV-A. They're also in ALSDE resources. So there are a couple of different places you can find all of them. So what's the process? If you are brand new to this, you're going to have your meeting with stakeholders, evaluate the program from the previous year. So here's another thought. Let's say last year we needed that 3rd, 4th, 5th math bump up. And so we implemented a new program. The The scores did not go up. In fact, they went down. So if that is true, you have to be honest about it, then it would not make sense for you to have those same goals and objectives and the same methods to address those the next year. So evaluating the program from the previous year says, here's what we did with our money. Here's the impact it had. Now, do you have to reach every goal every time? Of course not. But it does sort of help you in planning. So you'll complete that needs assessment using assessment results, attendance, behavior, participation levels, anything that's relevant. You'll use the results of those to drive your objectives, and objectives drive your expenditures. This is our program evaluation, planning, and reporting. So this people get confused all the time. It's completely understandable, but this is, what did we do last year? Here's how we spent our money. What were the results? How did that go? And so it may be that you improved a little, just not as much as you were hoping for. Whatever it is, this is just where you evaluate what we did with the money last year and was it effective? This is your needs assessment. It is not that involved, I don't think. And you can answer the questions. You can insert little narratives. People do that all the time. But again, there should not be, whatever is in your needs assessment should be reflected in your goals and objectives, should be reflected in your expenditures. So it, again, all goes together. And there are questions below that sort of help guide you if you're not really sure what to look at. This is your goals and objectives. The only caution I would say here is make them measurable. So like if you want to improve participation in AP classes, maybe say, last year we only had 5 children even attempt to take and then pass the AP. We would like to increase that by 2 or whatever it is. Or we had a serious problem with attendance. We had an attendance officer and counselor to really work with those families. Here's how we'll measure. How will we measure and evaluate if that was effective or not? And assurances, again, this is just a superintendent signature. This is something I wanted to point out. Wherever you are in Alabama, there are a million private schools within a stone's throw, it feels like. I have Google, but I can't know every single private school in the state just off the top of my head. So here would be my advice. If you have any private schools in your area, and I want to speak to that too, but I'll come back to that part. I need you to have this for each school. This is where you've reached out, you've offered the Title IV funding. They've either said yes or they've said no. If you don't have a private school in your school zone, then you could put this in and upload it and have NA, or, we do not have private schools. That way I know this is just not something that applies to you. Also, there is a difference among the titles in how private school funding works. And so in Title IV, if a private school building is in your school zone, they are, it is open for them to receive Title IV funds. I know that in others, it depends on where the child lives and things like that, but Title IV-A, it is school zone specific. So wherever that school building is, that is the school that needs to reach out about these equitable services. So documents were required for spending your Title IV money: advisory council signatures and agenda, needs assessment, superintendent's evaluation, goals and objectives. We didn't mention job descriptions, but if you were paying for any positions with Title IV-A funds, we asked that you upload a job description, and then that equitable services for your private school documentation. Let's see. That's it. Okay, and this is something that I think it's just helpful to have, and it was a nice visual. This applies, I know, to all federal programming, so it's not specific to Title IV. But if you ever are in doubt, this seemed a very straightforward way to decide whether you are supplementing or supplanting. Okay, and when we are going through applications and returning, the budget details are often a thing. Like, for example, HASRO is a really popular conference and it's very good. I'm not suggesting that it's not, but it's also at the beach. And so we have lots of people who want to go learn cool things and go to the beach. But if I know that it costs you $900, I don't know how much it costs off the top of my head, but if it costs you $900 and you say SRO, TASRO, $150, well, what is that for? So just a little more information would be great. Your advisory council agenda, as well as the signature page. If you're doing any kind of PD like that TASRO, how many people, which conference? I don't need to know the individual's name. I just need to know, hey, we're sending our SRO there, or we will send our high school English department or whomever. And then one more time, effective use of technology. It can be infrastructure, equipment, training. There is that cap. You're not supposed to spend too much. But things like security cameras are, yes, technological. They hook up to, wireless and all sorts of things, but they don't facilitate student learning. So that belongs in safe and healthy. And that's still fine for Title IV, but it doesn't belong in effective use of technology. So if you have any questions, here is our email addresses. Also, one of the first slides has our phone number. We try our very best to get back to you as quickly as possible. And so I think that's it. So are there any questions? I know I talked fast, but it's Friday afternoon.
Yeah, there is one question.
Okay.
If your district has a sign-in sheet that is standardized for meetings,
Okay.
do you have to use the provided Title IV-A template, or can we use our standardized sign-in sheet?
Standardized format, standardized sign-in is just fine. That's perfectly fine.
Okay. Regarding equitable services, the intent to participate letter,
Mhm.
Title IV-A is listed on the letter we sent out in the spring.
Okay.
Would that not suffice?
It will suffice as long as you know there may be schools that apply that need that for Title IV that might not need it for another title just because of how.
So it lists all the different titles and they can they can do a checkbox for the ones they want to participate in.
Okay, and we just had one school, a private school that didn't understand that. And so they did get money in a different title, but they should not have got money for us. So yes, that's fine. And we will be sending out in the next week or two, some more dates and information and ways you can get in touch with us, ways we can help. So just be looking out for that as well.
Okay, then. So we are going to kind of get things wrapped up. Any questions you have, please put them in the chat, or if something comes about as you're working throughout your applications, please don't hesitate to reach out to your regional specialist. I know we have Dr. Williams here, and some of you discussed about concerns about compliance monitoring coming up. If you want to reach out to Dr. Williams or his team to kind of schedule something, you may, but just know if you are scheduled to be monitored within the next year, you will receive a letter requesting or asking if technical assistance is requested, and that's when you will indicate the assistance that you need. So keep in mind that letter, that information goes to the superintendent, and he or she will should reach out to each departments to see what is needed, but just kind of keep an eye on that if you are being monitored in the near future. All right, just some last reminders. Remember to regularly check your CSPR data. We state this over and over. Please have a checkpoint, like a monthly checkpoint or something that you use to check your data. So when it's time to certify, you don't have any issues. You can certify your data and we can keep moving forward. Also, don't budget and carryover and finalizing your last year financials so that carryover can be loaded. The sooner you're able to do so, the sooner carryover is loaded and you can continue to move forward and have access to those funds. And planning your year, now is the time to start planning. You want to plan now for the upcoming school year so that come July, the funds are loaded. You can write your plan, submit, get an approval August, September, and start spending those funds. The earlier you have access to those funds, hopefully the more you will use them in that year and not have a whole lot of funds to carry over. The idea is to use the current year money on your current students. The goal should be no carryover. And once again, we're here to support. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact us. The first line of contact will be your regional specialist for your region. Just whatever it is, we rather you be proactive and ask and not sit there and try to figure things out in isolation. Some dates to remember: spring conference, mark your calendars, March 30th through April 2nd. And then mega conference coming up July 20th through 24th. They will be here before you know it. So that's all we have for you today. We hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy your weekend. We'll stay online for anyone for another 5 minutes just in case you have any questions. Thank you.
So there's a question about, is there a timeline of moving away from EGAP? I know the switch was mentioned in the fall.
Well, we are still in the process of working through those processes. No, there is not a timeline that we could share right now. We want to do some piloting. Dr. Killingsworth, well, that all of those things, it hasn't been worked out, but there's a strong possibility we will be moving away from EGAP. But the more information we receive, we will share with you. Probably receive another update spring conference. Maybe we will have more information to share. So just stay tuned on that. And right now, just plan with using AIM in preparation for that information to be uploaded in EGAP for this next year.
So there's a question about, is the hotel information available for spring conference? We are waiting on one more. We're waiting on one more approval before we can send that information out. There's just some things going up here that's caused a little bit of a delay, but as soon as we get that final approval, we have the code ready to send out to you guys so that you can get registered and get your hotel. And then there's a question, is the spring conference the same thing as the NFIPA conference? No, those are two different things. Spring conference is something that we hold from the ALSDE.
Here in Montgomery.
And NFIPA is a national conference.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure where it's at.
I think it's DC.
Is it in DC?
This year.
I think.
Okay, so if you are a member of NFIPA, you should be receiving update information. I think it may be held in DC this year, but every year, no, NFIPA is typically in DC.
Okay.
In March,
Okay.
or March or April. I remember because of the cherry blossom. So and that's typically held in DC, Marchish, April, but our conference, our spring conference that we held for federal program directors are typically held in March as well, here in Montgomery. So they're two different conferences. All right, so if no further questions, you all have a wonderful day, and we'll just hang out here for a couple more minutes just in case more questions are answered. Thank you.